Hey guys, Mitch here with the TheAudioDabbler YouTube channel, and today I'm going to take a close look at UltraTap Delay by Eventide Audio. It's part of their H9 series of plugins that they have released for the iPad and iPhone, so you can get them on both of your devices, which is really awesome. They work as AUV3s, interrupt audio, and standalone mode. And UltraTap is a multi-tap delay, and if you're not familiar with that, I will get into more of the details, but essentially, instead of taking the time and the feedback, you set the length and the number of taps that you would like in the range, and that's how it kind of delays. And that sounds a little confusing. I'll get more into that whenever we dive into the app. So let's go. Alright, so let's get into this UltraTap Delay plugin. Its thing is crazy. It can do a lot of really cool things. Let me just first show how I got this thing routed so you can kind of understand some things. I have FM Player 2, which will be coming out in a couple days, or it may be already out depending on when you're watching the video, but it implements AUV3, and so that's what I'm using as the sound source. And I have it bussed over to A, and I have Eventide Audio's UltraTap in bus A, and I have the mix knob all the way 100. Now the reason I have that is so that way I can have complete dry signal coming through channel 1 and complete reverb or complete delay coming through channel 2, and that allows me to turn this down and only hear the delay section, or I can turn it up and I can hear that section as well. It's a lot easier than having to fool with turning the mix knob up and down. And that brings me to another really cool feature that they have. They have a parameter lock on the mix knob, and what this allows you to do is you turn the mix whatever you want it to. In my case, I want it to be 100, and I hit the mix knob, the mix parameter lock right here. Regardless of the preset, the mix knob is always going to be 100, which is really useful whenever you set up something similar to this with having a mix bus. It just makes things a lot easier to, preset hop. So whatever I do, I'm always going to be getting 100% dry, wet signal on this side, which is just, it just adds, it's a little detail. So good job on that, Eventide. All right, so next thing is, like their other apps that they have this really nice little help section that kind of goes through each of the controls, the performance controls, and just kind of gives you a little blurb about it. And so if there's any knob on here that you don't completely understand, you can always click on it and see, relative mix is the relative level of wet and dry signals, length is the total time, which kind of brings me to, this is a multi-delay effect app. And so normally with a delay, you would have a kind of the time division, or time division, whether it be synced or in milliseconds, and you'd have a feedback. Well, the length or the delay time is going to say, okay, I want a quarter note to repeat, and then the feedback 50%. I want it to feedback, for so long, however the feedback is, and then it will fade away. Well, with a multi-tap delay, you have a length that you set, and it can be synced. This one right here allows up to 10 seconds, and a number of taps. And so if I turn this to, say, let's do this one since I already have it set up, a whole note. So the length is a whole of the delay, and the taps are 4. And if I set this taper over here to 0, it's not going to taper the notes, and so if I play a note, you're going to hear 5 notes because it's set to a whole note. And so this is how you can do kind of some basic delays. If I wanted to do, that would be quarter note. If I wanted to do 8th note delays, I could do, and then I would have an 8th note delay. But you notice there's no fade, and that's where this taper knob over here comes in handy, is you can taper the delay tail off. And so if I play it again, it sounds more like you have the feedback set. And if you turn it, say 50, it's going to fade out a little less. And so that's really useful that. And if you go the other way in the negative values, it's going to fade in. And so you're going to hear the initial note, and then you're going to hear the delay tail fade in. Especially if I turn it to 100, it's going to go from nothing to... Now it does have a factory preset, a factory default preset, which is, you know, it's nice in itself, but I wanted an initialize patch, and so I just went in and zeroed everything out, made my own little initialize patch. That way I can really dive into what this thing is doing. And like as I said before, the length is the amount of time, and if we hit sync, we can, you know, sync it up, and so I can sync it to 2 bars right there. And then the taps is the number of taps that is going to play evenly spaced in the length. So if I set this to 64, it's going to play 64 taps, you know, whatever note that I play in a 2-bar time divided evenly. You know, just like that. But you have this spread option over here, and what this does, it starts adding rhythm to that. Instead of them being evenly spaced, it's going to start spreading the spacing out some. And so if we go, you know, say to 100, you're going to hear it, and then, so think of this as like a ball dropping. And so when you drop a ball, like a bouncy ball, it's going to bounce and it's going to get higher, and then as it loses momentum, it bounces faster, but not as high. And so that's kind of how the spread, it seems how the spread kind of works. And, you know, anywhere in between, you can just get some variations on the rhythms. And then when you go into the negative range, it reverses that. Instead of the long spaces being at the beginning, the long spaces are at the end, and the shorter spaces are at the beginning. And so you'll hear this. And you'll hear them kind of spreading out as the delay tail goes further out. Which again can be really, really fun and useful depending on what you want to do. Alright, I've covered taper, spreader. The pre-delay is kind of self-explanatory. It's just delays the amount of time before the actual delay kicks in from the having an initial response. And so if I have it set to 1 second, I'll play a note, and then 1 second later, it'll process the sound, and so that's what the pre-delay does. It's helpful, you know, in certain situations with drums. If you're adding some delayed effects on drums, you want the initial attack of the drums, and then you want the delay to come in, you know, not as soon as the drum hits. Then you can do that pre-delay. It can help unmuddy a mix. All right, just going down through here, we got width, and this will kind of give it at 100%, whether it's negative or positive. That'll be whether it starts on the left or right, and it will give you a ping pong delay. And then anywhere in between is going to be kind of, you know, just not as extreme ping pong. The tone is just going to take the delay tail and make it a little brighter or darker, depending on if it's in the negative or positive value. Now the slurm right here is really nice. This is where you can take this UltraTap Delay and turned it into a reverb. And so I have a preset here that I've messed around with, and I think it sounds really awesome. So this is, I've just named this nice reverb because I feel like it's just a nice reverb. It sounds like a nice reverb. It extends over 2 bars. It's not too long. If you wanted it shorter, you could make it shorter. Or longer, you could make it longer. So it's really really fun, and if you wanted to taper it out more, you can adjust that, as would be the kind of the decay of the reverb if you're using this kind of like the reverb. And that's because of this slurm feature right here. And what that's doing, if I go back to initialize, so if I turn this slurm up, what that's going to do, it's going to start kind of slurring and smearing that delay tail to give you that kind of nice reverby sound. All the way up is going to be a lot more. You can hear it kind of do that, and if you spread it out a little bit, you can get some different sounds, and maybe not tapered as much. Add in some more taps. Maybe spread the stereo out a little bit. So you can get really, really crazy with just the, using it as a nice reverb. A couple more things I want to talk about is you can, with the syncing, you have a manual sync setting, and you can tap your tempo over here if you want to. And also you have this hot switch. And so if I have a quarter note delay here, this hot switch basically adds an A and a B section to the preset. And what you can do, see how it's going from quarter to, or 4 to 53, and the slurm's going from 0 to 56. That was kind of, I think that was under the default when I saved this patch. I didn't pay attention to the hot switch. But if you want to edit the hot switch, you can just click and hold on it, and it'll start flashing. And then you can move whatever you want to. Let's move this back to 4. And so now the hot switch is the exact same thing. So now what I can do is say I want this to go from 4 to 8th notes. And so now whenever I So I have a little hot switch that will switch between 4 taps and 8 taps, which was nice. And if you wanted to, you know, bring the slurm up a little bit, hold the hot switch down and it's blinking, and then you can edit another parameter if you want to. And so that's really useful, and this can be programmed as it does expose itself under the parameters here under AUM as hot switch on and off, so you can put that to a button or a foot switch and you can switch between the different sections on that. Alright, next thing I want to look at is this ribbon here at the bottom, and they've incorporated that in their other apps as well, and it's incorporated the same way as their black hole and their micro pitch. Essentially you have two settings, two sides of the ribbon. You can click on one side here and you can move some parameters here. And so I can turn this up to a lot. I can turn this way. Alright, and then maybe turn the spread and the taper. Alright, and then now as I go on this side, if I wanted to change some things up a little bit, I can add a little slurm to that. Alright, so now as I move this, it's going to move all of those parameters at once, which is really nice. This can be mapped to an expression pedal, and so you could do hands-free when you're playing guitar and get some really nice little effects going on. Alright, last thing I want to talk about is this little chop section. Now I've made this glitchy one preset here that I'm in love with this little preset that I messed with. Use of this chop, and so the chop has different sections. It has kind of a triangle. It has some triangle, saw, ramp, square, and sample and hold waves at the front, and it acts kind of like a tremolo of the delay tail, kind of with the volume and things like that. If you go to like the square, you can kind of hear it, and you have a speed setting here on how much you want it to kind of glitch out that way. Well, you also have a thing called ribbon, and then you can kind of swell in the delay tail if you want to. And you can kind of control how much of the delay is being sent. And then it has these swell and trigger options with input sensitivity. And so you can essentially swell, and you can notice this right here, it says rise and then release. So with the swelling is like a volume swell of the delay tail. So you hear that? You heard the delay kind of swell in instead of like with the pre-delay. If you wanted it to swell in, it doesn't swell in. You'd have to adjust the taper and the pre-delay to kind of get it to swell in like that. But with the chop, it will, and you have more control over how much it swells in, which is nice. And then the trigger will act like a gate, and the release is basically how much of the initial sound you want kind of glitched out. So if I have it all the way to 99, it's going to do a lot more than if I have it to, say, 41. Okay, so let me go back to this glitchy preset that I have going on here, and
So thanks guys for watching. Hopefully this was helpful and informative and you learned a little something. If you did, make sure you hit that
like button at the bottom, and even if you didn't, hit the like button because it does help with the ratings around here. And if you're not subscribed to my channel, go ahead and subscribe and hit the bell icon. That way you'll get notified whenever I put out a new video. In the comments below, what other Eventide hardware or software that you know of would you like to see them kind of port or make into an iOS app? Let me know in the comments below, and maybe they'll read that and take it into consideration. You never know. They've done an awesome job with the 3 that they've put out there so far, and I'm just can't wait to see what else they can do. As always, the links are in the description. PayPal, Patreon, if you're into supporting content creators that way. If not, you just share it on your favorite social media site, and just make sure you like and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys later.